everyone, and welcome once again to Pixar Discussions. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm the Geoff.
I'm named Dixon.
Was that scary? Did that bother you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Was that kind of scary?
Yeah.
Well, Geoff, good job. You're scaring the kids, so did you
Just
see the
like
lights
falling.
flicker just a little bit there when that happened? That was good. Well done.
Yeah.
So today,
I went to university for this.
today we're doing our fourth Pixar discussion, and where we've been doing these in chronological order, and so now it's time for Monsters Incorporated, which was up until this year my absolute favorite of these, trumped now only by Monsters University, which I've come to the place in my head where it's a smidge better. In my mind, but this is still a really, really great fun film, and so we're going to talk about it now. And Jason's been getting really big into the Monsters Inc. Monsters University thing since the Monsters University movie came out, and he really wanted to be with us, so he's going to hang out here while we talk about this. And Geoff, as I like to ask you, what was your initial reaction when you first saw this in the theater?
I laughed and laughed and laughed. And I just there was so many funny things in it. Both, not just the big everybody's gets it comedy, but so many subtle little things, moments that you're looking at in the right direction at the right time, and you notice, hey, and so many things that were paid off well in the course of it. I enjoyed the heck out of this movie when I first saw it. It's one of the first ones that I really noticed at the opening title sequence and thought, wow, they really did a thing with that. I mean, the Toy Story 2 had this great opening with the space thing because it was a misdirection. And this wasn't a misdirection. It was really fitting to the movie.
And I want to say this is the first one that had a full-blown title sequence, because even with the Toy Story 2 sort of had that, but it was still sort of integrated in a story context, and this was just an animated intro to kind of introduce you sort of to the feel of the world, because you don't yet know what's the deal with the doors,
Exactly.
You don't know why you're looking at that, and I like that sort of thing. It reminded me a little bit of the opening, and also the music in general in this kind of reminded me of the kind of the kind of overall feel of this movie too. It reminded me a little bit of 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah, there's another film where this extremely catchy soundtrack just binds the film together.
That was like duct tape.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that hit me in the theater, and immediately got me excited and jazzed for the movie.
There's a lot of jazz in it.
Yeah, exactly. I was sitting here trying to think of a different word, and I was like, no, I guess I'm just gonna go there. But anyway, yeah, it's weird. I don't always have that, and I tend to gravitate towards soundtracks. But here, it was the soundtrack first. And I mean, like, obviously, it's a whole cohesive piece. So, like, so that in conjunction with the premise.
I think
Jason.
the consistency of the soundtrack and the music and the scoring cues helped to go with the effort they put into the consistency of the visual cues and the shapes and signs of their world. All the TV sets have this kind of trapezoidal thing.
Mm-hmm.
The doors frames have horns on them. There is so much visually in there to help give this monster world an identity and a feel that identifies it. That you could tell the difference between this and the ordinary human world. And the way they use the music through this, I think, helps to do the same thing on an audio level. And I really like that.
It was immediately a good premise, and some of the ideas that they've had for these movies have immediately made me think, oh, that's a cool place to go. There's a lot of mileage there. And other ones have made me go, really, you gonna do that? Cars was like that, where I was like, really, talking cars? Okay. And then I liked it a lot better than I thought I would. With Monsters, Inc., that was immediately a premise that appealed to me. And much more so once I realized that it was, and I didn't get this until I went to the theater, of course, once I realized that it was gonna be the explanation for why kids think that there are monsters in their room and get scared. I think that's a neat idea. I think it was immediately an inspired choice to not do, okay, here's the real world, but it's monsters. Like Cars is, here's the real world, but it's cars. It's, here's this alternate world that links up with ours through, interdimensional doorways. And I thought it was neat, by the way, to do an interdimensional thing, but never use that kind of terminology.
Yes.
It never goes to a fantasy or sci-fi place in that it simply takes it for granted. It doesn't have to explain to you how anybody in the monster world ever figured out that these things were connected. We have to assume that human screams have always powered their world since their advent of electricity, I would assume, because it's the screams that power their just network.
I have no idea what they would have done before that.
Yeah, exactly, and so it's really interesting. And then the kind of the mythology is fascinating. And again, it's all throwaway stuff. When I say mythology, they don't give us a lot of it. It's fun to try to piece it together on your own. But the mythology of things like all of the monsters that we've heard of in our reality that people have gone off and tried to find, like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and everything, actually existed and were from that world. But the question the question that begs for me is, they must have had electricity way longer than us.
Yeah,
because we've heard of all of those things for a few, or several of them for at least a couple, 3-4 centuries.
Apparently they've been banishing their criminals and failures for a long time.
That was actually, and we might mention this again when we get to it, that was actually a tiny little inconsistency I noticed that I thought was kind of funny in Monsters University, because we actually see the Abominable Snowman get banished in that. That doesn't make any sense.
We don't see him get banished, but we see him there.
No, but my point is, we see, but we know he's going to get banished. We see him before that. That doesn't make any sense at all, because we know in the real world that people have heard of something called the Abominable Snowman for a long time. Yeah. We also know that the timelines match up and that time doesn't move any faster or slower in their world or in our world. Has to.
Do we?
Otherwise, Boo's parents would freak out. They wouldn't still have that room the way it was. You see what I'm saying? Like the timelines would have to match up, because she goes back to exactly the same room.
True.
Yeah, but
Presumably the same night.
Yeah.
But she's with the monsters for more than a day.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be the same. It might be the same night. I always got the sense that they were the same timeline. You might be right, but they're certainly not like centuries different, or decades
it's not like
or
Narnia
years.
Or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, it's not really made explicit exactly what the connection is or how their transport.
It's also not made important. It really doesn't
matter.
ultimately matter. Yeah, that's right. I just find those sorts of things interesting, so I bring them up.
yeah.
I wonder, since we learn over the course of the film that children are not in fact toxic or dangerous at all.
Yeah.
And at one point, I think in the news reports, after the child is spotted at the restaurant, the news announcer says, "For the first time in our history."
Right.
And that makes me wonder, how or why exactly did they think children are poisonous?
And I wondered if there wasn't some social commentary going on there. The question I had is that a political ploy to make sure that like they get the power that they need, so that they they distance the monsters from the children, and they keep looking at them as an object that gets us what we want, as opposed to what Boo becomes to Sully and Mike, a real person. Because wouldn't that be dangerous? Wouldn't that be potentially dangerous to them if you started actually seeing the children as people as opposed to objects?
To see what that did to Sullivan.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So my assumption was it was conspiracy. It was a political conspiracy.
Disinformation from the top.
Yeah, which is again a fun, subtle thing to embed in this movie, but it's not like a cynical movie. It's just in the background, and maybe not because we're just kind of guessing and interpreting. But you get interesting things like the CDA, the Child Detection Agency. That's a foil, as far as I can tell, for the Drug Enforcement Agency, and because they're wearing hazmat suits. These would be the guys that would go like break up a meth lab or something, and we're putting this in a children's film, but it works because of the context. So I
wondered about that.
So what I thought was fun was you've got these people that are supposed to their whole training is in stopping these terrible things from happening with children showing up. That's their expertise, but none of them have ever done it.
Yeah.
Ever. It's like so they're experts in a field that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's fun.
You wondered why there were that many of them dedicated to this thing that can't happen, that I guess never happened. And then the one time it did, it turned out to be just fine.
That's a standard movie thing too, and I think that they could have gotten away with not making a big deal out of this is the first time it's ever happened. Jason.
Yeah, I wonder if they had been quite thinking things through when they put that line in.
But the trouble is, by not doing it that way, you'd wonder, well, wouldn't there be precedent for people knowing that the children aren't really toxic?
Yeah, it seems like if this had happened more times in the past, then someone would have figured it out sooner.
Yeah.
Maybe someone did. Water Noose clearly knows. Randall, I think, seems to know. Even Roz handles the child as though she already knew that no, children are absolutely perfectly safe.
Yeah, and is still her top priority is keeping a lid on that.
Yeah.
And maintaining the facade.
That seems to be the CDA's real function.
Yeah, is to maintain a facade. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting, intricate politics going on. Again, in the background of what's a far more simple buddy story.
Yeah, which it is another Pixar buddy story, and turns out they're getting really, really good at these.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another brilliant Randy Newman soundtrack. Turns out he's really, really good at this.
Yeah, it's neat that they gave him another one because, well, and you need to give him the ones that are buddy stories because he's so good at writing those songs. Yeah. I like this one better, or as well or better than You've Got a Friend in Me. The one that he writes for Sullivan and Mike at the that we get the lyrics of it at the end. But it's neat the way he does it here because You Got a Friend in Me was just kind of the anchor pop song for Toy Story, but here, if you could call it a pop song, here it's actually the anchor in the actual score.
Right.
And then becomes a song, more pop sounding song by the time you get to the end of it. I didn't know that until you get to the end of it. So that's a neat way to organize your soundtrack.
And unlike the others, this is a song that is sung by two people.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
All the others, makes sense, sung by one artist. This one you had to have the both of them together. And for what it's about, that makes perfect sense.
I think it's important to note, I just thought of this, that we've got, Jason, I think it's important to note that we've got the first Pixar movie here where we have a human being running around through the whole movie.
Yes. And there are technical issues with that. One of the big puzzles that they invested a lot of energy in solving for this movie is how to handle clothing. Because fabric, as you move, crinkles and twists and shadows itself in all sorts of complicated ways that needed modeling. They'd never done this before.
Mm.
And then, of course, Sullivan's fur, they needed a system for modeling each strand of hair individually and independently. The software they developed to do this, they called PHYST, for physics tool, I think it stood for. And you see PHYST on some of the buttons of the consoles on the scare floor.
It's really cool. You wouldn't even know that if you didn't look into it.
But yeah, this and making sure that the different hairs of his fur cast shadows on each other. All 2,320,413 of
You
them.
totally just made that up.
Wiki it.
You totally just made that up.
2,320,413 hairs on Sullivan.
If you actually remember that, I'm gonna lose my mind. Anyway, and they nailed that.
Yeah.
It looks amazing. The big one I noticed is at the end when they're writing on the doors, and you've got all of the wind or the air conditioning or whatever exactly is with all that air coming at them, flowing through his fur. It looks so real.
Yes, this is their first real success with fur or hair of any kind.
And it's impressive because there's so much of it. There's not a middle ground here. I mean, like, they really had to do a lot of fur.
We're going to tackle this time, and we're going to make sure that we force ourselves to tackle it all the way. There's going to be no half solution to this, which is a great way to approach it. It also raises the amount of computing power that they needed. Look this up. The number of processors in their mainframe rendering farm for the original Toy Story was about 200.
Mm-hmm. You don't know the exact
for
number?
Monsters, Inc., it was over 3,500. So,
wow.
like 15 times as much computer processors to render this than what they started with. For the textures and the fabrics, for all the texture on the blankets and the bed, and they're continuing to progress technically in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's another really ambitious project, and it looks so much different. It's such a different kind of project than Toy Story. Even though there are, of course, lots of similarities. We're dealing with children again. We go into kids' rooms again. I think it's kind of fun that we open up in something that looks a little bit like Toy Story, because we're in a little kid's room and he's going to sleep, and then it's like, oh, and now we've got this monster about to scare him. So it's a totally different thing. But the aesthetic is similar. Then you get into the monster world. I think it's neat that they kind of use that to bridge the gap. So it's like, here's something that you're not only used to seeing, but you're used to seeing from us. We're going to use that to bridge the gap and get you into this whole other world that we've created. And you mentioned textures. That's the thing that impresses me the most about the animation, is all of the different textures from these different monsters. I think Randall is one of the coolest models for any character they've ever created. I did a review of Monsters University with Aaron Dicer right after the movie came out, and he, at the end of the show, he asked, he wanted both of us to name our favorite characters out of all of Pixar. And at the time I said Emperor Zurg, partly as a joke, but the more I'm thinking about it, I think it might be Randall Boggs.
Randall is a lot of fun as a character and as a monster. And one of the things about Randall and about all the monsters in this and that impressed me was how, with such a variety of anatomical structure for monsters, and yet each one got thought through. Randall has this many legs and walks on some of them and uses some of them for hands, and it's not always the same combination depending on what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he uses
so he's got a
his
lizard
extra
and
arms.
centipede thing going on simultaneously.
When he's using them as arms, it looks very natural. It looks like a living monster with that number of arms and legs that had been used to living an entire life with those appendages. He uses them like that.
That's a great point, yeah.
And on the other end, there are monsters that just seem to have two big feet and a head in the middle and nothing else. And they all move really naturally, as though they were used to being monsters with two big feet and nothing else.
You've got monsters with multiple eyeballs. They blink at different times.
Every different monster has a naturalness to its motions that watching this you maybe take for granted, but 10 years earlier, if some other studio had made this film and animated it, it's easy to imagine them not bothering.
Yeah, sure.
To think, okay, how would a creature with this number of tentacles, eyes in this configuration, a mouth in this place, how would that creature walk? How would it pick up objects? How would it interact with other creatures? How would it handle things that were designed to be comfortably manipulated by something that was 3 feet larger or 3 feet smaller?
Yeah.
And there's so much of that kind of attention in this movie, and that helps the whole thing come alive. It helps all of their characters to be characters and plausible. And I think that is part of the magic of Randall.
Yeah, and like we said with the Toy Story movies, the priorities and focus are in the right place. You start with a really believable relationship between your two protagonists, and then you build your story from there, but you pay attention to those details so that the world itself comes alive, so that we believe these people that we come to care about inside of this larger world. So it's not just about world building, it's about building a world for these characters to exist in. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
And that's the only reason they were able to make another film in that world.
Sure.
That world was rich enough.
Yeah, that I wanted to see more of it. Yeah, exactly. And there was more to say in it. And frankly, more jokes to make in it.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies where it's really easy to do a whole lot of references because monsters, just like with toys, are things that have existed and permeated in our culture, and so we can make kind of puns and gags and things, but not have to go to the obvious like present day modern cultural references like another house might go.
And since their world is parallel to ours, it's got things in it analogous to things in our world.
That's true. Yeah, I like it. I like it when Mike
ground
says we can't. He's going through all these ideas of how to deal with Boo, and he says wooden horse, that's too Greek, and that kind of thing is okay because the world looks enough like ours that we can buy that they've had paralleling histories, or at the very least that because they have a window into our world, they know our world also.
And we find out in Monsters University that they at least have something analogous to the Greeks.
True, yeah. Although they have their own Greek alphabet, because Uzma is a letter.
Yeah. As is Roar and
Omega?
Slither.
Well, yeah, Roar, Omega, Roar, and yeah. Was it Slither, or was it...
I thought there was a Slither, or maybe it was Hiss.
Hiss is what, yeah.
But, no, they do... The richness of the world is one of the things that carries these films so well. The richness of all the characters, not just the main ones. And the fact that they really put some creative energy into creating a diversity of monsters. I mean, even the CDA monsters in those yellow uniform things.
They have different shapes.
I'm going to assume that those are uniform things. No two of them look quite exactly alike. Although they do have a kind of coherent look, maybe just because of the way the uniforms are designed. Mm-hmm. But even them, no two of them are built the same way. And that delightful attention to diversity. Maybe some of their subtext about the monster world. Mm-hmm. There's something that humans have not gotten quite good at.
That's a great point. Yeah, and they've been forced to because they all look so different. Yeah, you if you had the sorts of prejudices that we have just in race and that sort of thing, they would have all killed each other already because there's so many different ones. And you get the sense that probably two monsters get together and have a baby and it looks entirely different than the two that it started with. Yeah.
Or they would never have been able to have those wars in the first place because there are never enough that are of any one configuration to
they don't seem to
organize.
It's funny that we're talking about this on such a cultural and political level, but the idea that they're not gonna branch off into subgroups based on that. They would based on it. We know from Monsters University at least that they obviously branch off into subgroups based on social class and things like that. Naturally, like most societies are going to, but not so much based on just we're all green monsters, or we're all
tentacles versus feet,
insectoid versus reptilian,
and I think that's a really great way of making a point like that.
I didn't even think of it like that.
Without it being one of those movies that's teaching us a lesson about toleration and understanding.
It's kind of just there.
It's just a part of their world, and it's not a big deal to them.
Yeah.
And that's a
They take
beautiful
it for
way
granted.
to tell us that shouldn't be as big a deal to us as, unfortunately, sometimes it turns out to be.
Sure. Just like, I know sometimes this was preachy about it, but just the very notion of having a bunch of different ethnicities on the bridge of the Enterprise.
Exactly.
They don't have to talk about it. It's just that way, and they take it for granted. Yeah. No, that's a great point.
And it was more. The original models for Mike Wazowski had no arms.
Really? Okay.
They worked in development with an armless Mike Wazowski for quite a while before they decided
he's got to be able to hold
didn't
things.
work. There were too many difficulties with how is he going to handle objects that he needs to handle and do things they need him to do. So they ended up giving him arms.
They would have had to drastically do something different with that big climactic action scene with the doors at the end, because he's got to be able to hold on to things.
But several of the monsters went through transformations like this in the development process, and as did Boo. In the course of getting this story together and getting in the early pre-development kind of stages, Boo ranged through just about every ethnicity, male and female, and from quite a range of ages. The original concept for the story, for the movie that they absolutely started with, it was about a 30-year-old man who was frightened of monsters he was bothered by as a child.
That's
and
interesting.
He was going to be meeting those monsters and conquering his fear.
Oh, that's cool. That could have worked.
And so the entire storyline of this movie, as well as the cast, went through quite a journey.
Yeah.
To get where it was.
I think it's fascinating and a really smart move to go with a little to not speaking at all character that you still end up liking and caring about. This is a great way to do a kid, because you don't get a lot of 2.5, 3-year-old or however old she is, maybe even just 2.
I'm thinking kind of in the 2 to 3 range.
Yeah. She's barely a toddler. Yeah.
Just starting to have some language, but not quite the master of it yet.
This is a kid that feels like a real kid.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that she seems to have teleportation powers.
Yes.
Because I don't understand that. It's funny. I think this movie, by the way, I'm jumping around. I think this movie does some kind of cartoony stuff for the sake of being cartoony that doesn't entirely jive with some of the rest of it.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of that going on. The two big things for me are the fact that every time Sullivan closes a door, he thinks he closes on Boo, she winds up behind him. That's not possible. I don't know how she does that. But I like how he kind of makes that a little bit analogous to Randall. Like, wow, you're kind of good at this like your monster is. That's sort of fun.
Maybe that's why Randall was her monster.
But the other one is when Sully thinks that she's been killed.
Oh, and he's watching her go through watching what he thinks is her going through the garbage compactor machine.
They went way over the top with that. His reactions, he's got like where he just keeps like pseudo
Tex
fainting.
Avery takes,
and it's too Tex Avery for this material.
And it's quite different from the visual approach to the rest of the film.
Exactly.
It sort of sticks out that way, but
and I feel like I guess the thing is that scene would have played differently if she were actually dead.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, is that it doesn't quite work, because that's playing for comedy too much, because if she were actually dead, we
would never have forgiven them for making that much.
It would bother us. Yeah. Of course they wouldn't have done that, but my point is he's acting out of character so that we can laugh at it. And there's a little bit of that goes on in this movie. That's probably my only complaint about it, is that there are some places where characters get, and you pointed some out too, and I didn't immediately agree with you with the Mike one, but I'm coming around on it. Let's talk about that for a minute. The idea that sometimes characters get a little bit dumbed down in order for either a plot thing to work or a joke to work.
And that seems like cheating to me when I see it in the film. The big one in this movie that still kind of annoys me is Randall has got Wazowski cornered and is presenting the plan. I will get the door at noon when everybody's going to lunch, and explaining this, and it feels so familiar. Okay, in 5 minutes, what happens? The scare floor will be empty. I get a timeout? That came out of nowhere. That was just stupid. And granted, it gives Randall an excuse to be more Randall. It helps show us more of Randall's character, and also presents an opportunity for Randall to commit some rather funny abuse on Wazowski. But still, Wazowski is not that dumb.
It's out of character
until that moment.
And what makes it difficult is that part of his character is that he can be oblivious.
Yeah.
That's immediately set up with the very funny joke of you just got your entire head blocked out by the Monsters Inc. logo on the commercial, but I don't care. I was on TV. So the things that he's charming by what he doesn't notice.
Yeah.
But there it's kind of a matter of he's a little bit more humble than you would expect, and so that's kind of fun. It gives him a humility. By not having a humility. That's kind of fun. It's like he doesn't notice that. He's just excited he got to be on TV. That's fun. But they make him too oblivious in other places. I don't like his girlfriend. I like the design. I like some of what she does, but for the most part, I feel like they make her really typical irritated girlfriend who doesn't give the boyfriend a chance to explain anything before she immediately starts getting mad at him. And what's annoying is I know that there are people like this that exist, but I don't. But I think it's I
watch a
find
movie
it
about 'em.
somewhat cynical to put them in movies like that, especially because it's like, okay, well, I find myself liking Mike. I'm overstating this. It's not as big of a deal as it's going to sound like it is to me. I'm overstating this, but the idea that Mike becomes a little bit less cool in my mind because he would date a girl like that. You see what I'm saying? That's kind of a difficult thing for me. She comes around a little bit at the end because what's really going on is proven to her.
At the end.
She has that, but it's obligatory. I don't know. Does that not bug you?
It did not bother me.
Okay, all right.
I found her frustration understandable.
I find the frustration understandable. It's just that it's one of those things where it's a movie thing. It's obvious that Mike's not doing this on purpose, but she's immediately assuming that he is, and then she has to have that obvious men line. I just don't like that.
I don't know. That didn't bother me.
Oh, all right, that's cool.
I believed it. I believed the character.
You want to get down? Okay.
I believed her. I believed her dialogue.
Okay, well, fair enough.
Yeah,
it's something I noticed more on this viewing than I ever had before. So
maybe you don't want to see the ditzy receptionist trope played up any more times than it already has been, but she's not as obnoxious as she could have been.
Well, she also doesn't get a whole lot of screen time, so
yeah, and she's not a central character.
No, she's not. It's just that I'm used to liking the not central characters in Pixar films, and she's dating one of our protagonists, so I want to like her more than I do. That's all.
The schmutzy cutesy talk would have annoyed me more than that moment did.
Oh, okay.
But that was worth putting up with for Sully Wally and Suyo Yulia.
Yeah, and also the kind of where he kind of gets him when he says, "Yeah, I put the reservation under Googly Bear." That's funny.
That was another just great little thing.
John Goodman is an inspired casting choice.
He is. He is Sullivan.
As is Billy Crystal, but Goodman doesn't have to do anything but be Goodman in this. It's cool because like. Pixar prides themselves on casting people based on acting ability more than fame, and a lot of the time they'll cast somebody that can do a voice. With John Goodman, he's basically just doing John Goodman. It's like if Sullivan was a real life character, I mean not a real life, a character that you were going to play in live action, he'd still be the right role for it. Just like Fred Flintstone. I mean, it's like that.
He is a very Fred Flintstone character. In a lot of ways, and I think
I didn't think of that until just now.
In the soundtrack, there's a lot of a Flintstone approach to the Monsters Inc., the factory, the
It's also
industry.
It's also a way better movie than Flintstones.
Well, yeah, but And I'm talking about the
The
cartoon.
cartoon, right.
We're going to pretend that movie doesn't exist.
Well, but I liked him.
Wasn't
in
he
it.
in that?
That's my point. He was Fred
he
Flintstone
was.
in that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
What a great choice!
But yeah, that's what I'm saying is that he was Fred Flintstone, and
Makes more sense to
I
me
felt
now.
a little bit of that in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal had been offered, I guess, or was in consideration, but turned down because he couldn't or was busy for Buzz Lightyear.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Before
that.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that now.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a very different Buzz Lightyear. But he did. He as Mike Wazowski owned the character all the way.
And again, he's doing a little bit more of a voice than Goodman is.
Yeah, a little bit more so, although not very much.
Not very much. No.
And they got close to giving him "Have fun storming the castle." Go grow up.
Yep, that's true. I didn't think of that.
Almost waiting to hear a shout out to that line. Maybe for the best that they didn't.
So let me ask you the obvious question: is this as good as the Toy Story movies?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a beautiful movie, visually beautiful. It's got the world. You're there. You live in that world for this whole movie, and I think even more so than any of the others before this. I did not live in the bug world the way I lived in this movie's world. Even the toy world.
Yeah, and isn't it kind of neat how limiting the world is, because we spend almost the entire movie in one building.
Yeah.
It's a giant building. It's enormous. But what's cool is it's not just the monster world at large, which we get to see a nice glimpse of at the beginning, but it's like the business sucks us in.
Yeah.
Like not just the monster world, but also the way this company works.
Yeah.
Like the world of the company also kind of drags us in, and so it's kind of neat that we see just this one little snippet of it, and this whole world comes alive for us, and that's why it made so much sense. Ultimately, I'm saying this in hindsight after seeing it, to make Monsters University, because there are more places in this world, and again, there we spend most of the entire time in one place,
And yet those places harmonize so well with each other. And again, part of that is with that careful attention to making sure that the little details, posters on the wall, the shapes of objects, things that are kind of recognizable and yet just different enough.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm making is they could have really stabbed themselves in the foot by having too much scope.
Right.
And yet the scope feels large because it is a interdimensional scope. We do get every door activated at the end, and you get to that last action scene is great, and you get to go to a few different places through the doors and stuff.
I mean,
so it feels bigger than it is. We've got a very simple story that I don't want to say it tricks us into thinking that it's larger than it is, because it is pretty large, but it's grounded in a couple of characters and in this small place, but we get a sense of scope.
Exactly. And that action scene at the end, just about every movie has this, and honestly, these are usually the points in movies that I kind of tune out.
Me too, yeah.
Okay, car chase, explosions, action,
we know what's going to happen.
Denouement, wake me up when the credits. Because
you don't start paying attention again until the villain and the hero start telling you what the movie's about. Yeah. Right before the villain gets killed off or dropped down an elevator shaft or something. Yeah.
I mean, I know the people who make the movie must really believe that this is the part that I should be the most interested in, but I'm usually not.
That's right. Yep.
Monsters, Inc. is one of the few movies where that sequence really holds my attention.
Why?
Because I think some of it has to do with the amazing creativity they show with just the door concept. They go in this door and then they're here. And
the tram is kind of a cool Wonka sort of thing, yeah?
The flying assembly, the fact that doors, it's a factory, they got doors in storage in the racks, they've got doors in transport, they've got a couple stacked over here for who knows what reason. They've got some here. They climb into a door has fallen off its tram and is plummeting towards the floor. and they get in the door just in time before it shatters, and then they pop up another door somewhere else. The amount of imagination in that whole door chase sequence just struck me, and it wasn't, chase, okay, drama, action. They did stuff with it, and they did stuff with the characters in it, beyond simply paying off a punchline or a catchphrase. And that was the thing I appreciated. It kept surprising me in interesting ways, in the way that the standard denouement tactic hardly ever does. So, well done.
And another one of those movies that's really rewatchable.
Yes.
That I haven't myself getting sick of. Yeah, and like I said, it's my favorite of them. The Monsters movies collectively now. So yeah. Anything we didn't cover that we oughta?
I like the fact that we can't understand Boo.
Yeah.
I like the fact that she's talking and she is saying things.
That's part of what makes her
that-
feel like a
yeah.
real kid. And they're kind of ambiguous as to where she's even from. I'm not sure what part of the world even she's from.
And we're not supposed to be able to tell because it's not supposed to be an issue.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
But I appreciated the fact that she didn't have actual dialogue, and I think that helped her stay out of the cuteness trap. Because so often you
She
get
is
a
cute, but that's
movie,
not the only thing she's got. Yeah.
with the child character, and the child character becomes this black hole of smarmy, smart aleckiness, but we'll laugh because it's cute because a little kid said it, and really, really awfulness so often attends that. And by making Boo a character who speaks in a combination of some language we don't understand or can't even identify.
Like an English word here
Yeah.
and there. Yeah.
Whatever language it is, it has kitty in it. It sounds like her song has sailing
And
in
Santa
it,
Claus.
and Santa Claus and his sleigh. But beyond that, but that helps her, and it also helps her feel as foreign to us as she should feel to the monsters. I thought this is another perceptive touch on their part, helping the character feel like she has got to feel to Sully and Mike.
Well, I think that if she were any older and was going through the whole movie talking a whole lot and stuff, that they would feel the need to develop her too much,
Yeah.
and she would get in the way of the friendship, but also the conflict in the friendship between our two protagonists. It would be a very
Right.
different movie. And if they had done the thing with like the 30-year-old man that you were talking about, it would be a different movie. It wouldn't be a buddy movie. But so that was really smart. So she ends up being a character we care about. Something else I wanted to mention too is that this is an artifact plot. It is several factions trying to find an artifact, and that can sometimes be a really stale and uninteresting stand-in for a real story. But by making that artifact a person,
Yeah.
that we care about, we get to kind of watch the monsters learn the lore of us.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of interesting. I also think, and I'm probably reading too far into it when I say this, that there's kind of a neat idea playing out. I don't want to call it a metaphor, but there's this neat idea playing with having her in a monster costume most of the movie. This idea of the monsters and the humans aren't that different. You know, and she's a person too. She's a monster
And that
too,
monster costume
or the
worked.
monsters are people too. I think that's kind of neat.
It fooled them all until it fell off her head at the very end.
Hey, Jason,
Right.
who is your favorite character in Monsters, Inc.?
Sully.
Sully.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like Sully a lot? Yeah?
My favorite color is blue.
Your favorite color is blue?
Yeah.
Does that help too? Do you like Boo?
Yeah, blue.
I think you're a little older than Boo now. Because you can talk in complete sentences and stuff.
Because who's funny is Boo's in Mario.
In Mario?
Funny.
What?
Who's funny?
And Mike.
In my oh yeah. And Mike.
Mike.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mike Wazowski.
So what else did we cover? We got
Fur soundtrack. Boo.
these are the kind we'll get that in a minute. Other French words.
Inconvenience.
Non-essential.
No, such a fun movie, and none of the jokes feel bad the second time. Some of the rewatchability.
I actually pick up on things. Harryhausen's.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I didn't pick up on. I didn't know who Harryhausen was. And picked on it especially. Picked up on it now, especially. He just died this year.
Yes.
A
tribute.
It's kind of really. We should review some Harryhausen movies. I'm not a big fan. I have a lot of them. Sarah loves the Harryhausen
film the
movies.
review in stop motion animation.
Yeah, you think so?
I think that would be appropriate.
In that style, yeah. That is one of those really rare kind of cultural, kind of more contemporary cultural references that Pixar is making. They don't usually do a lot of that kind of thing, but it's subtle, it's embedded, it's just the name of a restaurant, so it's not this kind of in-your-face kind of thing. You pick up on it or you don't pick up on it. It's more of an homage even than a reference, right?
Yeah, and it's not a look at us being clever. It's just... It's more like an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Or
it fits in there.
Like the way that the Abominable Snowman is modeled and drawn and is animated, so much like the Abominable Snowman in those old stop-motion Rudolph movies.
I thought that was fascinating. He looks a lot like that.
And just the whole shape of his head, and it's unlike any other monster in the movie. The way his motions, the way his mouth moves, no other monster is animated like that.
You're right.
There's a little visual homage to another landmark in stop motion animation.
Even the way the texture works, it's a little more clay than the rest of them, because those were done in claymation.
Yeah, his fur is different, and these just little sort of flags to say, yes, we are part of the history of animation.
Yeah, I don't think we're going too far into saying that was that was an inspiration. I really think think they were influenced by those.
I'm sure it was.
Well, Geoff, next time we're doing Finding Nemo.
Is it lost?
Yeah. Yeah, it's on like this island where it has to press a button every 108 seconds. And anyway, but
oh, right, with the ants.
Yes, with the ants. So Finding Nemo is the very next film that came out after Monsters Inc. and we're gonna handle that. This is gonna get fun because we've got Monsters Inc. and then we've got not Monsters Inc. We've got Finding Nemo and then we've got Incredibles. Can't wait to talk about that. So
Pixar was sued.
Over what?
Over Monsters Inc. by 2 different people
claiming
that they had ripped off ideas from them. One had them in court asking for an injunction to halt the release of the film the day before the film was released.
Weird.
Claiming that they had drawn a children's book or something and was pitching it to Hollywood in 1997, 98. The other one, I think, had a song or something that sued them a year after the release of the film, claiming that Pixar had stolen ideas from them.
I'm assuming they all lost.
Pixar won both of those suits. In both cases, the thing that they were claiming Disney had ripped off was not published or brought to Hollywood or sent to anyone Hollywoodish until well after Pixar had already begun working on this film.
Okay.
Which they began working on this film in 1995.
Yeah. Do you know what do you know what sorts of things they were claiming they stole? Were they really vague kinds of things that, like, if you're doing a monster thing, you're probably going to talk about, or?
Well, one was a story about monsters in closets and kids becoming friends, and I think one was visual. I don't remember the details of it. Weird. But they were both they were both things, as I read about them, that I could sort of see why they might think Pixar had stolen ideas from them, and yet I could also see how in fact they hadn't. And
well, and how sometimes things like that can be really coincidental.
Yeah, these things, synergies happen.
Because making this as early as they did. Well, the thing you got to keep in mind too is that sometimes it's hard to tell, even when you're a person making something, where exactly your inspiration comes from. And sometimes it's just a timely sort of thing that, like, sometimes I think just the kind of general atmosphere of the nation or of the world at a certain time can bring people's minds to similar places creatively.
Well, yeah. And
the idea to make this a little bit political is something that you would have thought to do in the late 90s, early 2000s in a way you wouldn't have thought to do in, say, the 70s, probably.
Certainly not. So, but yeah, this is the first of the Pixar movies to face legal battles. And happily, they won. Or at least, happily for me, happily for Pixar.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Not so happily for the people who sued them, because they lost.
And they probably lost a lot of money.
And, well, they certainly didn't win any.
Well, anyway, we will be doing Finding Nemo next time, and I think that's it.
There it is.
So, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you again really soon with Finding Nemo. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm the Geoff.
And I'm Dyson.
Bye. Hey, you're making him lose his focus!
Oh,
You're making it worse!
oh no!
Sorry!